Hi Year 4, I hope you've had a wonderful weekend. I am back to read you the story, this time reading from the classroom. Say hello to the classroom. There's Miss Smith and Mrs. Casson having a chat outside. So we'll get started. We need to do something, Lucy said, looking around at the chaos surrounding them, when suddenly they heard a whisper. It's her, hissed the voice excitedly. It's the girl who knows what to do. There was a rustle, and the leaves on the tree above them parted. A group of children emerged, clambering down from the branches like wild monkeys. Lucy counted 6 of them, all so dirty and their clothes so ragged and torn that it was difficult to tell if they were boys or girls. As they swung down from the branches to the pavement, one of the wild children nudged another and said, Oscar, go on. The boy was shoved closer to Lucy and Norman. We want our mummies and daddies back. Please help us, the filthy child said, his eyes suddenly large and worried so that he looked like a sad kitten. Food, another one whispered while crouching beside the tree. And food, added the first child. Do you have any food? Lucy looked at Norman. Things had turned from bad to worse. It wasn't funny anymore. The novelty of having no grown-ups around was wearing off fast. These kids were tired and hungry. I've got some eggs and beans you can have, offered Norman. They're still in the pan in my... Before Norman could finish his sentence, the wild children scurried down the street in the direction of Norman and Lucy had come from, in search of his food. OK, you're right. We need to do something, Norman admitted. But what? I need to go to the Wallab and get the grown-ups back, Lucy said, staring after the wild kids. I was afraid you were going to say that, said Norman, wiping the sweat from his forehead with his yellow scout scarf. But how are you going to do it? You don't know your way around the Wallab. You've got no idea how big it is or where it leads or whereabouts they're keeping our parents. It's impossible, he sighed. Unless what? Lucy asked hopefully. Unless we somehow manage to get one of those creakers to take us to the grown-ups. Norman gazed into the distance, deep in thought. Lucy grabbed his arm. Norman, that's a brilliant idea, but how are we going to do it? What you doing? Squeaked Ella Annoying, popping out suddenly from behind them, making them both jump. Ella! Norman gasped. Lucy cried, Have you been following us? Maybe, said Ella. Norman and Lucy looked at each other. How much did you hear? Lucy asked. Only all of it. Oh, sorry. Only all of it, sang Ella in an awful, over-the-top, operatic voice, flinging her arms around like a diva. I heard it all, I heard it all, I heard it all, she wailed in a painful, screeching voice. Ella, you can't tell anyone what you heard, Lucy shouted, cupping her hand over Ella's mouth to shut her up. It's a secret. Ugh, yuck, she licked my hand, she cried, snatching it away from Ella's grinning mouth. Please, I'm 6 years old, Ella said with a dismissive wave of her hand. I know there's no such thing as monsters under the bed. Your silly stories don't scare me, you know. Stories, right, Norman said with a naughty little twinkle in his eye. Hey, Ella, if you're so brave, why don't you come to our ghost story sleepover tonight at Lucy's house? What? Lucy cried. Norman quickly shot her a look that said, Play along. Right, yeah, I forgot. A sleepover, Lucy said, as she realised what Norman was up to. She bit her lip to hide a smile. Norman really wasn't so bad after all. It'll be fun. We'll stay up past midnight and everything, Norman added. Midnight? Really? Come on, Norm. That's like so early. Millie Butkins was awake until 1 a.m. last night. You've got to do better than that. OK, fine, 1 a.m, Norman agreed. Are you in? Ella looked suspiciously at them both for a moment before shrugging her shoulders. If you throw in a packet of marshmallows, then you can count me in. Deal, Norman said, and they shook hands. Ella skipped off merrily towards Trampoline Avenue, leaving Norman and Lucy alone. 2 words, Norman said as they watched Ella disappearing into the distance. Live bait. Almond milk, butter, eggs, toilet rolls, toothpaste, AA batteries, dark chocolate. Oh, sorry, I needed somewhere to write my shopping list. Back to the story. Chapter 10. The Creaker Trap. The plan was simple. Lucy needed to get down into the wallop and find the grown-ups. And to do that, she needed to catch a creaker. It was going to be a bit like fishing, Norman had explained to her, which was one of his favourite things to do with his dad, and Ella Noying was the bait. Not just Ella, in fact, but Ella wearing Lucy's dad's stinking work coat. "It's perfect," said Norman. "We'll make Ella wear your dad's pongy jacket. The creakers will sniff it out, see a little girl wearing it in the middle of your bedroom, think that Ella is you, and then try to snatch you. And when they do, that's when we'll trap 'em." Now, it's not very nice to use little girls as live bait to catch monsters, but if you ever have to, then it's always best to use an annoying little sprog like Ella, just in case they do actually end up getting snatched. That way, at least, you won't have to put up with them anymore. "Don't worry," Norman added quickly, seeing that Lucy was looking uncertain about this plan. "I'm about 87% confident that we'll catch a creaker before it gets anywhere near Ella." Norman and Lucy agreed that this was an acceptable risk in such extreme circumstances, and so they went straight back to Lucy's house to lay creaker traps. But to Lucy's surprise, her house wasn't quite as she had left it. "It's clean," she said, as she looked around at the mess-free house. The night before, she'd been too scared to tidy up. She just leapt into bed, leaving the house in a right state. But today it was spotless. How odd, Lucy thought. The house was a complete pigsty yesterday. There was rubbish everywhere. I didn't clean it up, and no one else has been in here except... She paused for a moment. Her eyes opened wide. "The creakers!" they both shouted at the same time. Norman shook his head. "Wait a minute. Are you saying that the monsters under your bed, the ones that snatched away all the grown-ups and live in that creepy world beneath us, decided to have a quick spring clean before chasing you down that hole last night?" "Looks like it," Lucy said, shrugging. "I wonder why," Norman pondered, scratching his neatly combed hair thoughtfully. "What are you thinking?" asked Lucy, intrigued by Norman's pensive silence. "Well, any half-decent scout knows that the best way to catch something is to work out what it wants. The creakers are coming back for your dad's disgusting coat, right?" "Yeah. You said you left the house like a complete dump." "Yep. And when you came back, all the mess had gone?" "Right. So maybe," Norman thought for a moment, "maybe that tells us something about these creakers. Maybe they love rubbish." "What?" said Lucy, finding that a little weird. "Think about it. You said yourself that the wallop was all disgusting and stinky. Well, maybe they take all our dirty, mucky stuff down there," Norman said. Lucy opened her mouth to argue, but found that nothing came out. Sometimes that's how you realise that something else is right. "Let's make a creaker trap," Norman grinned. They spent the rest of the afternoon cobbling together the craftiest creaker trap they could think of. Lucy was pretty good at it, but Norman, with his scouting expertise, was amazing. He rolled out a large sheet of paper and drew a map of Lucy's room. "This is only rough. If I'd had more time, I would have drawn a more accurate plan," Norman said apologetically. "Norman, it looks amazing," said Lucy, staring at the incredibly detailed drawing spread out in front of her, on which Norman had written, "Norman and Lucy's Creaker Trap Plan," in big letters. Here's a copy of the plan. Together, they set to work collecting the most horrid, stinking leftovers from the back of Lucy's dad's rubbish truck. Norman showed Lucy how to lay out a trail of rotten stuff leading from the shadows of her bed to the centre of the room. At the end of the trail, they marked an E with a piece of chalk. That would be Ella's spot. Next to it, Norman wrote a C for creaker, over which they hung Lucy's mum's extra-large washing basket. "That'll drop down and catch 'em," Norman explained, as he rigged the basket to a complicated pulley system of skipping ropes, which wound around the room and finished inside Lucy's wardrobe. "That's where you'll hide, ready to release the basket," he added. "Where will you be?" Lucy asked. "I'll wait on the bed, ready to jump on the basket once it lands on them," Norman said, sounding surprisingly brave. "What are we going to do once we've got them?" I'm going to make Ella sing to them until they tell me where they're keeping the grown-ups," Lucy said, and they both laughed as they admired their masterpiece. Somewhere in the laughter, Lucy realised she hadn't felt this happy since her dad left. Despite the grown-ups going missing, the sudden appearance of monsters in her room and a backwards world existing beneath her bed, Norman had managed to make her laugh. We're going to stop there for today, guys. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day, and I'll see you tomorrow for episode 7 of The Creakers. Bye-bye.